At 75, I learned the real reason my sister stopped speaking to me 30 years ago. My sister hasn't spoken to me in 30 years, and until last month, I had no idea why. My name is Robert Hutchinson. I'm 75 years old, and I just discovered that the estrangement that defined half my life was based on something I never said and never did. My sister Anne is 2 years younger than me. Growing up, we were close in the way siblings often are when there are only two of you. We shared rooms in the various houses we lived in as our father moved for work. We protected each other from our parents' arguments. We had the kind of shorthand communication that comes from growing up together, where you can finish each other's sentences and know what the other is thinking with just a look. We stayed close into adulthood. I was the best man at her wedding when she married Tom in 1972. She was there when my wife Sarah gave birth to our first child. Our families spent holidays together, vacationed together, celebrated birthdays and anniversaries together. Our kids grew up more like siblings than cousins. We talked on the phone at least once a week, sometimes more. She was one of my favorite people in the world. And then in 1994, it just stopped. Anne stopped returning my phone calls. When I showed up at her house, she wouldn't answer the door, even though I could see her car in the driveway. When I sent letters, they came back unopened. It was like a door had slammed shut, and I was locked out of my sister's life, with no explanation. I asked Tom what was going on. He said he didn't know, that Anne wouldn't talk about it, that she'd asked him not to discuss me with her, and he was honoring that request. I asked my parents, but they claimed not to know either, though looking back, I wonder if that was true. I asked Anne's friends, our mutual acquaintances, anyone who might have insight. Nobody could or would tell me what had happened. I went through everything I could think of that might have caused this. Had I said something offensive at the last family gathering? Had I forgotten an important occasion? Had I somehow insulted Tom or their kids? I replayed every conversation, every interaction from the months leading up to the silence, trying to find the moment where I'd done something wrong. I came up empty. For the first year, I kept trying. I called and left messages. I wrote letters explaining that I didn't know what I'd done, but I was sorry and wanted to fix it. I showed up at family events she'd be at, hoping we could talk. She avoided me completely. If I walked into a room, she walked out. If I tried to approach her, she turned away. It was like I'd become invisible to her, or worse, like I was someone she actively hated. Eventually, I stopped trying. Not because I stopped caring, but because the rejection was too painful, and I didn't know what else to do. My wife Sarah said maybe Anne was going through something personal that had nothing to do with me, that maybe she'd reach out when she was ready. My parents suggested I give her space and time. So I did. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. The estrangement created strange complications in our family. My parents tried to maintain relationships with both of us, which meant they had to carefully coordinate holidays and visits. So Anne and I were never in the same place. Eventually, it became easier for them to spend major holidays with Anne and see me at other times. I understood, but it hurt. It felt like I was being punished for something I didn't do and didn't understand. My children asked why they didn't see their aunt and cousins anymore. I didn't know what to tell them. How do you explain to a child that your sister has cut you out of her life for reasons you don't understand? I told them that Aunt Anne was going through a difficult time and needed space, which was vague enough to be true, even if I didn't actually know if it was. Sarah tried to maintain a relationship with Anne for a while, reaching out occasionally, sending Christmas cards. But Anne stopped responding to her too, eventually. Sarah said maybe it was easier for Anne to make a complete break than to maintain some connections while excluding me. I suppose that made sense, but it still felt like punishment. My parents died within a year of each other, my mother in 2008 and my father in 2009. Both funerals were awkward, horrible affairs where Anne and I were both present but didn't speak. We stood on opposite sides of the grave. We sat in different sections at the memorial service. Tom tried to mediate at one point, suggested that maybe the deaths of our parents was an opportunity to reconcile. But Anne shut him down immediately. After my father's funeral, I tried one more time. I approached Anne in the parking lot and asked if we could please talk, if she could please tell me what I'd done, so I could at least understand. She looked at me with such cold anger and said, "You know exactly what you did, Robert. Don't pretend you don't." And she got in her car and drove away, and that was the last time we spoke. I spent years trying to decode those words. You know exactly what you did, but I didn't know. I genuinely had no idea what she was talking about. I went through every possibility again, every interaction, every conversation, every moment I could remember from the time before the silence. I asked Sarah if she could think of anything. I even asked my adult children if they remembered anything from that period that might explain it. Nobody had answers. The not knowing was worse than if she'd told me I'd done something terrible. At least that I could apologize, try to make amends, understand the magnitude of my mistake. But this ambiguous accusation that I knew what I'd done when I genuinely didn't, it left me in this limbo where I couldn't move forward and couldn't go back. I carried this weight for 30 years. The loss of my sister, the confusion about what had happened, the frustration of being blamed for something I didn't understand. It affected my other relationships. I became cautious about saying anything that might be misinterpreted, constantly worried that I'd somehow offend someone without realizing it and end up in another inexplicable estrangement. Last month, I got a call from Tom. He said Anne had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it wasn't looking good. He said she had maybe 6 months, possibly less. He said she'd agreed to see me if I wanted to come, that she'd decided she needed to clear some things up before she died. I drove to their house the next day. I hadn't been inside it in 30 years. Tom let me in and led me to their living room, where Anne was sitting in a recliner. She looked so much older than I remembered, which made sense since I hadn't really looked at her in 3 decades. She was 73, but looked 80, thin and tired from the cancer and the treatments. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Anne said, "Tom told me I should talk to you before I die. He said carrying this anger wasn't good for either of us." I nodded, waiting. She took a breath and said, "I need to know why you did it. Why you told Dad that Tom was having an affair." I sat there completely stunned. I had no idea what she was talking about. I told her I'd never said anything like that to our father, that I didn't know anything about Tom having an affair, that I had no idea where this was coming from. Anne looked at me with suspicion, like I was lying. She said, "Dad told me in 1994 that you'd called him and told him Tom was cheating on me, that you'd seen him with another woman, at a restaurant." I shook my head. I told her that never happened, that I'd never seen Tom with anyone, that I'd never called our father to report anything like that. I asked her why she'd believe this without ever asking me directly. She said that Dad had been very specific, that he'd quoted things I'd supposedly said, that there'd been no reason for her to doubt him. And then Tom, who'd been standing in the doorway, spoke up. He said, "Anne, I need to tell you something. I was having an affair in 1994. Anne turned to look at him, shocked. He continued, "Your father found out somehow. He confronted me about it. He told me that if I didn't end it and never mention it to you, he'd tell you himself and encourage you to divorce me. I ended it, but I think he blamed Robert for discovering it. Or maybe he just needed you to be angry at someone other than me." The room went completely silent. Anne looked between Tom and me, processing what she'd just heard. Her father had lied to her. Her husband had lied to her. And she'd spent 30 years estranged from her brother based on those lies. Anne started crying. Not quiet tears, the deep sobs that shook her whole body. She said she'd wasted 30 years being angry at me for something I never did. She said our father had robbed us of decades we could have spent together, holidays and birthdays, and ordinary moments. She said she'd let her children grow up without knowing their uncle and cousins because she'd believed a lie. Tom explained what had actually happened. He'd had a brief affair with a coworker in 1994. It had lasted maybe 3 months. Before our father somehow found out about it, he never knew how. Dad had confronted him, threatened to destroy his marriage, demanded he end it immediately. Tom had complied. He'd never told Anne because Dad had made it clear that revealing the affair would have consequences, that he'd make sure Anne divorced him, and that he'd lose everything. I asked why our father would lie to Anne about me being the one who told him. Tom said he thought Dad wanted to protect his own image as the one who discovered and dealt with the affair, but also wanted Anne to be angry at someone other than Tom, so the marriage could survive. Directing her anger at me accomplished both goals. It kept Tom in the family while punishing someone for the affair Dad had discovered. Anne asked Tom why he never told her the truth. He said he'd been afraid, watching our relationship disintegrate. He thought preserving his marriage was more important. He admitted he'd been a coward and was sorry. We sat processing 30 years of lies. Anne apologized, wishing she'd questioned our father's story. I told her I understood why she believed Dad. There was no reason to doubt him. But I was angry. 30 years of estrangement, holidays apart, children growing as strangers. All because our father lied to protect his image, and Tom let that lie stand. I remembered trying to reach out, being rejected, accused of unknown things. The pain was immense. Explaining to my children, parents' funerals from opposite sides. 30 years of unexplained blame. Anne and I talked for hours. She shared her life. Graduations, weddings, grandchildren, never knew. I told her about my life, my children's achievements, grandchildren she'd never met. It felt wonderful to reconnect. She was still my sister. Terrible because of what we'd lost. Her son's wedding I missed. My daughter's cancer she didn't know. Ordinary Tuesdays lost forever. Anne died 3 months ago. The cancer moved faster than expected. I'm grateful for our last moments. But 3 months of reconciliation doesn't make up for 30 years of estrangement. At her funeral, I met her children and grandchildren. They were kind, but strangers. These people, central to my life, were strangers because of a lie and a secret. I've thought about this constantly. How much damage secrets and lies can do. Our father thought he was protecting Anne's marriage by lying. Tom thought he was protecting his. They thought they were doing the right thing, or causing the least immediate harm, but the harm was immense. They robbed Anne and me of 30 years of siblinghood. They robbed our children of knowing each other and us of being there for each other. They did all this to protect themselves, making me the scapegoat. I'm angry at our father, even though he's dead. He valued his image over our relationship. I'm angry he let me suffer for decades under false accusations. I'm angry at Tom, too. He chose his comfort over my relationship with my sister, but mostly I'm sad. Sad for Anne, who died angry at her brother for nothing. Sad for myself, for losing half my adult life with my sister over a lie. Sad for our children, who grew up not knowing each other. Sad for lost moments. Anne wished she'd handled things differently, confronted me directly. She trusted our father completely, and that was her mistake. I told her I understood, but I wonder what our lives would have been like. Would we have uncovered the lie then? Would we have had those 30 years? I'm 75. My sister is dead. 30 years destroyed by lies. The only lesson: secrets destroy more than truth ever could. If someone cuts you out, don't give up. Push for answers. Demand clarity. Don't accept unexplained estrangement. The reason might be a lie. If you're keeping a secret affecting others, tell the truth. Consequences are better than lies. My father and Tom thought they were protecting. Instead, they destroyed a relationship. If you're cutting someone out, get the full truth. Verify what you've been told. You might be wrong, and by then, it might be too late to get back what's lost. I lost 30 years with my sister. 3 months of reconciliation isn't enough. Don't let this happen to you. Fight for truth. Fight for your relationships. Don't let secrets steal your time. Once it's gone, you can never get it back. And that's a lesson I learned 30 years too late.